So next up is our keynote speaker, Arlen Orchard. Many of you know Arlen as the CEO and General Manager of SMUD. Arlen retired earlier this month after almost 30 years with SMUD. He addresses us now as the Chairman of the Board of the California Mobility Center, an exciting new public-private partnership that curates commercially meaningful interactions between future mobility startups and its membership base of leading commercial, institutional, financial, and government organizations with a vested interest in future mobility success. Please welcome Arlen to the Zoom stage. And while you're welcoming him, I will get his slides up. Okay, Arlen, your slides are ready. And just give me some sort of signal when you want me to change them.
I will. Thank you very much, Laura. And good afternoon, everyone. I looked at that picture and it's clear I need to update it because I look a lot older than I do in that picture, or maybe I need to update myself to look more like the picture. But anyway, give a shout out to Jose, my former colleague, as always, does a great job, and the work he's doing in sustainable communities is making a real difference. I couldn't be more proud of Jose and his team. So just a shout out for the last panel. Good afternoon, everyone. And it is great to join you today in a conversation about the future of mobility. I want to thank Startup SAC for the invitation to talk about one of my passions, which is the California Mobility Center. So for those of you who haven't yet become acquainted with the CMC, we're a public-private consortium whose goal is to accelerate innovation and commercialization of new products, services, and technology in the clean mobility space. The CMC is focused on creating an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, large and small businesses, investors, and academia to build world-class companies. Oh, and if you suddenly see me waving my hands at some point like this, I'm in a room with a super energy efficient lighting, which turns off without any notice, and if I don't move soon enough. So I figure it's better I disclose that up front rather than when you see me do it and thinking I've lost my mind. So with that, let me give you a brief history of the CMC. The founding members include SMUD, Sacramento State University, UC Davis, Greater Sacramento Economic Council, and Terzo Power Systems, a local startup. And we've had really active support from the city of Sacramento and Los Rios Community College system also. So we began our formation activities in mid-2019, thank God pre-COVID, and are quickly moving towards the launch of commercial operations, and I'll talk more about that towards the end of my presentation as to where we are exactly today. So today I'm going to really address three main topics. First is, why is the time right for the CMC and why Sacramento is poised to lead in future mobility? Second, how is the CMC structured? And third, how CMC clients and industry members in our region will benefit from the work that we're doing. So let's start by talking about California and Sacramento. Next slide, please. So the time is really right. The growth of the EV market has accelerated worldwide. An increasing number of automakers are committing to a future where EVs will dominate production and sales. Public perception of EVs has shifted demonstrably. The level of global investment in mobility-related technologies, including autonomous or human assist technologies, has exploded. Utilities, OEMs, large tech, and startups are connecting the dots among traditionally siloed industries to leverage optimized solutions with a focus on creating this new mobility ecosystem. And while challenging, COVID is really only a speed bump along the way. So the answer as to why California is really simple. California is the most influential future mobility market in the Western Hemisphere. We represent nearly 50% of the US EV market. Silicon Valley is the world's leading center for technology innovation, and California has the greatest concentration of venture capital investment in new mobility solutions in North America. Auto manufacturers and tier one auto suppliers have opened R&D facilities in California, and also many of them have also opened captive venture capital arms. With its aggressive carbon reduction goals, California has the most progressive regulatory environment around clean transportation in the United States. And it's not just goals or mandates, but the state is also providing grants to provide or to support new mobility solutions. I don't want to get too political, hard not to these days, but depending on the election, we could also see a profound shift in Washington around support for clean mobility beginning in 2021. California's academic and research institutions have made focused commitments to advance clean mobility solutions, including our own UC Davis and Sacramento State University. And so startups clearly recognize the California advantage, and more than 40% of mobility startups call California home. But despite all these natural advantages, the world for a mobility startup is anything but simple, and the barriers can be overwhelming, whether it's access to capital, talent, prototyping, or testing and validation services, just to name a few of the obstacles they face. So the CMC is here to help startups on their journey. We're here to help them remove barriers and successfully commercialize. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So how are we going to help? The CMC provides a single point of entry to California resources to create a faster path from concept to commercialization. At the CMC, we like to say that we curate commercially meaningful connections for startups to a wide range of resources to help them accelerate, streamline, and reduce costs. As examples, the CMC curates partnerships between innovators and industry and incumbents early in their journey, provides access to a talent pipeline through key partners like Sacramento State, UC Davis, Los Rios Community Colleges, and nonprofit partners, creates opportunities for capital investment and support for state and federal funding through grant opportunities. The CMC helps navigate the regulatory environment, which can be particularly cumbersome, and connects to service providers and others to demonstrate and validate new products. The CMC provides support for startups at every stage, including technology and product development, advanced manufacturing, testing and validation, and commercialization. So I'm going to speak to each of these curated experiences a bit later. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. The CMC has been purposefully structured, I guess I would say, to empower key players in future mobility to collaborate on the successful commercial launch of new products and services. So a small CMC staff recruits participants, evaluates plans, oversees partnering, and facilitates access to those resources needed for commercial success. In broad terms, the CMC ecosystem enables each constituent to both contribute and benefit from the other participants at the CMC. Industry members provide clients, who will largely be startups, with advice, sometimes resources, industry insights, and market access. Clients provide industry members with innovative insights, early access to promising new products, and partnership opportunities. Preferred service providers and staff provide the expertise, equipment, and programming needed to bring innovative concepts to fruition. And finally, where required, CMC stakeholders provide a conduit to the broader future mobility ecosystem, such as connecting to the investment community and talent pipeline. So over the next 3 slides, I'm going to provide some more detail on each of the CMC constituents, and I'll start with the CMC clients. So let's go to that next slide. So clients are promising future mobility startups, kind of duh, right? From around the world that are making transportation safer, cleaner, and more accessible. Areas of innovation include autonomous driving, connected vehicles, electric vehicles, charging and other related infrastructure and technologies, smart and shared mobility, and importantly, on-road and off-road applications. The CMC staff will screen each applicant and professionally evaluates the viability of their business models. Applicants accepted as clients of the CMC will work with staff and partner with industry members and preferred service providers to develop and implement a comprehensive commercialization plan. So let's move to the next slide, which describes our members. So first and foremost, we really want the CMC to be a member-driven organization. The CMC membership will be made up of a wide range of corporations, institutions, and governmental agencies. I talked about this public-private consortium at the beginning that really have a vested interest in fast but smart and safe transitions to future mobility products and services. So member organizations include but are not limited to OEMs and tier 1 suppliers, and by that I mean auto companies and parts suppliers, electric utilities, tech companies, vehicle fleet owners and operators, universities, government agencies, and of course, the key to it all, mobility startups. Member dues are the primary source of funding for the CMC's O&M activities and are based on the size of the organization. Member benefits will vary depending on the goals of the individual members and obviously their investment level. So members that simply want to stay current on future mobility will gain insights through access to CMC publications, analyst briefings, and thought leadership materials. Members who want to engage more directly and have greater access to startups may be selected as advisors on client action teams, help startups test and validate prototypes as a demonstration partner, or even cut a purchase order and work with a client toward a commercial launch as a deployment partner. Finally, members also have an opportunity to interact with other members in the broader ecosystem through a number of CMC committees, forums, and industry government outreach efforts. So we really believe the members will see great value in the opportunity for, I guess I think of it as cross-pollination among the different industry groups engaged in the CMC. In essence, allowing the members to step outside of their traditional industry silos. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So the final category are our preferred service providers, which help client member deployment partners navigate the business, technical, financial, and regulatory challenges of a successful commercial launch. These service providers are leaders in their fields and would normally be beyond the reach and resources of startups. However, they also understand the need to stay relevant in the future mobility segment, the importance of California, and the commercial advantages of CMC's partnering approach. And at CMC, we have been very successful in negotiating favorable rates in exchange for that preferred service provider designation. So preferred service providers are retained directly by the CMC clients who are responsible for their fees. However, the CMC has created a streamlined process with favorable rates for that engagement, so cutting that time shorter for applicants. In addition, the CMC provides access to funding options that will help clients pay for these services. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about funding options a little later in the presentation. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So let's talk about how CMC programming and partnering come together to support clients at different stages on that path from innovation to commercialization. So each circle represents a client at a different stage of development. So let's walk through a few examples of the type of program offering and partnership that would that an applicant would typically experience at each stage of the process. So the circle on the left represents an early stage client seeking to ensure that commercialization requirements are incorporated early in the manufacturing process to avoid things like costly re-engineering later in the process. Partnering at this stage can take the form of advice from industry members familiar with these requirements. Programming may be supported by advanced manufacturing resources from PIM Motion, a CMC founding partner and service provider is one example. That middle circle represents a mid-stage client that needs to field test a prototype or validate its performance. In this case, a demonstration partner may underwrite the cost of testing or provide resources and or facilities to help in that process. And CMC programming ensures the commercial relevance and rigor of the testing. So the circle on the right represents a later stage client that is ready for a commercial launch. So in this case, a deployment partner will support the launch, including cutting an actual purchase order for the product or service. CMC programming anticipates and helps address some of the challenges that large companies and startups encounter when working together. Believe it or not, they speak a different language. So the CMC will help bridge the cultural differences and ensure a successful launch. And I'll just say, having led a large company in a very established industry, the utility industry, and having worked over a number of years with startups, that language difference can be the difference between success and failure. So the three kind of circles that I've just talked about, these examples illustrate what we mean when we say that the CMC curates commercially meaningful interactions. Let's go ahead and next slide, please. So it's also really important to understand what the CMC isn't. And it is not an accelerator. Rather, it provides a valuable next step on the path to commercialization. So what we're seeking to do is fill what we believe is currently white space between the work done by traditional accelerators and go-to-market. Our ultimate goal is to facilitate rapid commercialization. So accelerators play a very valuable role in preparing early stage companies to meet with, but not generally work deeply or partner with industry members. Traditional accelerator programs often culminate in demo days that bring startups and industry leaders together and sometimes lead to investments and other transactions. This is a really important first step for startups, but it doesn't necessarily get them all the way to commercialization. So in many cases, both industry leaders and startups alike have found that the next step, the creation of a successful working relationship, is challenged by those things I spoke about in the last slide: differences in culture, pace of progress, and risk tolerance. In many cases, these challenges can slow or even derail commercial progress for a startup. So the CMC is really structured and focused on ensuring that the working relationship between clients and industry members is productive and very results oriented. Again, our role is to curate these relationships, help bridge the cultural differences, and help both clients and members partner towards commercialization. Another value add that the CMC brings is to help clients with financing strategies to support commercial implementation. So let's move to the next slide and chat about the funding options available to clients. So what we all know, bringing a new future mobility product and service to market requires resources and investments. While the CMC doesn't underwrite these implementation costs, it does provide assistance through a variety of funding options, in essence, creating bridges. The first is through the traditional connections the CMC provides between clients and industry members. The second is through grant opportunities. A few of the CMC preferred service providers are market leaders in providing support for grant identification, evaluation, preparation, and submission. And finally, the CMC provides a direct connection to equity and debt funding through Intertech Capital, a venture capital firm in the clean energy, tech, and mobility space. Intertech is a founding partner of the CMC and manages a dedicated future mobility venture fund. But to be clear, clients are not limited to the Intertech VC funding at all. So I want to make sure that's an important point to make. So most of us at this conference today are from the Sacramento region. So I think it's also important to speak directly to the local and regional benefits the CMC provides the Sacramento region. So let's go to the next slide, please. So in addition to serving the global market of future mobility startups and industry players, the CMC also provides local and regional benefits to the greater Sacramento area. A key need identified by the larger industry members and by startups is the lack of a trained workforce for this emerging industry. The CMC addresses this need by close partnership with local academic institutions and nonprofits to train and retrain the future workforce that is desperately needed. And this runs the gambit from technical certification jobs that don't require college education, all the way through graduate engineering and computer science degrees. We believe the creation of a talent pipeline will spur economic development in our region and provide good paying opportunities to residents in our communities. Importantly, the CMC and our partners are committed to inclusive workforce development and ensuring that future mobility job opportunities are extended to those residents in our disadvantaged communities. The CMC is purposefully locating in a promise zone in Sacramento, and coupled with our commitment to inclusive workforce development, the CMC is making a strong statement about supporting equity in our region and helping reshape the underserved neighborhoods in the Sacramento region. As the CMC evolves and local future mobility ecosystem blooms here locally, it will provide tangential but very real economic benefits to other local businesses and local governments as well. Let's move to the last slide. So where is the CMC on its own journey to commercialization? We have, and remember, we just started less than 18 months ago. So we've created the organization and seeded the initial board. We've secured startup funding and have completed our business plan and validated the business model. We have secured an initial facility located at the Army Depot, which will include office space and our initial advanced manufacturing ramp-up facility. We've ordered the initial equipment for the facility, and it will be outfitted and ready for business late in Q4. Our partner, Sacramento State, has begun the planning and environmental review for the 25-acre Mobility Innovation Park, which will be the ultimate home for the CMC and its advanced manufacturing factory. The property is on Ramona Avenue and is located within a promise zone. We've identified our first cohort of clients and will begin working with them Q4 of this year or early Q1 of 2021. We expect to formally launch the CMC in Q1 of 2021. We secured $1.4 million of city funding through the CARES Act to jumpstart our workforce development effort and have partnered with several local nonprofits to support the effort. We'll be launching our industry member recruitment effort over the next several months, and we're expanding the board to include leading mobility experts to help shape the CMC's future. We have launched the venture fund to support investments in the CMC clients, and I think you'll agree after that laundry list of things that we've been pretty busy over the last 18 months. And despite the challenges of COVID, we've managed to continue to move forward, I think, pretty darn quickly. So in closing, let me have some water. In closing, let me recap some of the key points about the CMC. Structurally, we're creating an ecosystem of clients, members, and preferred service providers to spur innovation and accelerated commercialization. Our industry value proposition is that we create a single point of access to the most influential future mobility market in the Western Hemisphere. The CMC approach is curated collaboration featuring programming and partnerships between startups and established industry players. The differentiator is an emphasis on successful accelerated commercialization. Our regional benefits include talent pipeline support, inclusive workforce development, sustainable high-paying jobs, and economic growth and opportunity. So the CMC is the gateway to future mobility success for Sacramento, for California, and for far beyond. So thanks for listening, and if there is time, I am happy to take questions.
Okay, we do have a couple minutes for questions, and we've got one in the Q&A right now, Arlen. A question from Douglas Van Camp. He wants to know, at what point should a startup apply to the CMC?
So I would say you're at that point where you are you've got a firm understanding, you've got your initial design of whatever your product is. Maybe you've secured some initial fundraising, and you're really looking at what is the best way to connect with industry to help refine my product's offering in a way that I'll meet the needs of the industry. So I think when you're at that point, if you remember the three circles, you're ready, and you have your initial business plan, you are ready to at least start talking to us about where you may fit in to the process. It'd obviously be on that left-hand circle. But if you're a startup that is at that point where you are confident in your design and you are ready to begin that prototyping or testing and validation phase, that's also a good time to come to the CMC, because we can slot you in at that point and start working with you to ensure that you've got that meaningful testing that gets you ready for commercialization.
So Arlen, there's a follow-up question from Bob Gregory or Robert Gregory. He wants to know how a company applies to become a CMC cohort company. Is that information on the website? Is that something to wait till Q1?
So at this point, I would wait for Q1. So the good news is we started building this and we were like, is it a field of dreams? You got to hope for somebody to come. The good news is initially we had a lot of startups reaching out to us, expressing interest. So we were able to focus those on a couple of, I think on three, maybe four, depending on how the negotiations go, with 3 or 4 initial startups that kind of provide some breadth and diversity among startups, in order to run them through our process the first time to figure out where our gaps are and refine our process. So we're in that soft launch right now to figure all of that out. So I would say Q1 is a good time to start reaching out.
Okay, great. And then kind of a general question from Harsh Verma, who is the chapter director for Sacramento's ACM. If you're familiar with that organization, it's kind of all things software and computers. And he's interested in what kind of partnerships the CMC would be interested in as far as the local community goes.
I'm sorry, Laura, I just lost you on the audio.
Okay, is that better?
Very much so, thank you.
Okay. So Harsh, who is the director of Sacramento's ACM chapter, wants to know what kind of partnerships is the California Mobility Center looking for in the local community?
So I think a couple of different opportunities. One is obviously we're in Q1, we'll be rolling out kind of the membership opportunities. So there are opportunities for companies, startups, or other larger companies to become members that will provide access to information. There are opportunities to, 1, perhaps be a client, or 3, be a demonstration partner. So I think that there's a number of ways that local companies can be a part of it.
Great. Well, it sounds like we'll be hearing a lot more in the beginning of 2021. I know a lot of us can't wait for 2021 to get here. So
from your lips.
So thank you so much, Arlen. That was probably that's the best presentation I've seen on the CMC so far, because it sounds like you guys have really done a lot of formulation in the last few months. So that's
You know,
awesome.
we like to say we're building it and flying it at the same time. So
Yes, yes. Well, that's how innovation takes place. So I'm really excited about the future success of the California Mobility Center, and I can hardly wait for the grand opening of the CMC in the first quarter. So
wonderful.
again, thank you, Arlen.
Thanks again for the opportunity. Take care, everyone.
All
Bye-bye.
right.